So I'll start by just telling you a little bit about myself. I'm a mathematician, and about 6 years ago I founded a company called Rebellion Research. We're a quantitative hedge fund, and since about January 2007 we've actually been managing money for outside clients, applying machine learning algorithms to investing in the stock market. And so a lot of my entrepreneurial experience comes from there. And today I'm just going to tell you about the way I think about entrepreneurship and my thoughts on different challenges that entrepreneurs face and how they might go about addressing these challenges when they're starting a business. So first of all, to talk about the challenges, there are a lot of different skills you need as an entrepreneur, and it's very unlikely that you have all of these skills already. Things like product development, employee management, customer relations, marketing, building a website, so many different skills that it's very unlikely that you're going to get everything right. You're almost certainly going to make a lot of mistakes when you first get started. Second of all, there's a huge space of actions that you have to choose from as an entrepreneur. At any given moment, there's just an enormous variety of things that you could do, much more than we're used to as employees or as students. And so I think this can be another challenge, is just considering the space of actions and trying to optimize over it. And furthermore, there are a lot of things that are really hard to predict in business. Things like how successful a product launch will be, or will a marketing campaign actually add new users, or how many users will it add. And so there are a lot of prediction challenges, and as a new entrepreneur, it's going to be very hard to have any sort of accuracy in making these predictions. So basically, you should expect that there are going to be a lot of failures that occur when you first start a business. Failures to really consider the range of choices you have available. Failures to apply good business practices. Failures to actually apply optimization to what you're doing when optimization would actually be very useful. And failures to make accurate predictions about key aspects of your business. So it's inevitable errors will be made, but my view is that if we think things through really carefully in advance, we might be able to avoid some of these errors. And so I'm going to discuss a few of the first decisions an entrepreneur has to make. Things like selecting your business idea, vetting this idea, selecting your business partners, dividing up ownership in the business, and choosing how quickly to launch your product. And for each, I'm going to talk about some of my thoughts about how to handle those processes and how to make good decisions in each of those areas. Alright, so first of all, let's talk about generating business ideas. Now, I think that a lot of times people will hit upon some idea that they find exciting, and there's a lot of temptation to just go create a business around that idea. It's easy to get attached to our own ideas, especially once we started thinking about them a lot and investing some time into them. Also, there's this other factor, which is that a lot of people view ideas in business as not that important. It's this sort of ideas are cheap mentality that talks about execution being the main aspect of business and ideas being less important, which makes people want to stick with whatever idea they already have and just focus on executing that idea well. But the thing is that ideas really matter. It's worth asking yourself, if you put in a considerable amount of time right now, could you come up with something better than what you've already thought of? Is this really the best you can do? And some businesses are obviously much more likely to succeed than other ones. So this is really something worth spending some time thinking about. And of course it's important to execute well. But if you do a high quality execution of a bad business idea, it's much less likely to succeed than a high quality execution of a good business idea. Alright, and we should also observe that the cost of generating ideas is really quite low. So if you actually go ahead and start a business, it's going to take you hundreds of hours and more like thousands of hours in most cases to actually even generate profits, if you ever see profits at all. So putting maybe 10 hours into generating business ideas is actually a very low investment and actually could have huge potential payout down the road. So I have a rule of thumb in terms of generating business ideas, which goes as follows. Say you found an idea and you think you're ready to start a business. I propose that you go generate, say, 14 more business ideas, 7 in the domain of that idea, of the original idea in the same industry, and 7 just other ideas in different spaces. And if the original idea you had is not pretty clearly better than all of those 14, you probably are not done thinking of ideas yet. You're probably under-optimizing. Alright, so how do you actually go about thinking of business ideas, though? I mean, what kind of procedure might you use? So I have a few suggestions for this. The first suggestion, think of a specific area in your life. So for example, maybe social networking or traveling. And now think of a need, desire, or frustration that you have in that area that's currently not being met by any products in the market. Now go and think, what product could be created that would actually fulfill this need? So for example, suppose you pick up the area of online dating, and your experience in online dating has basically been that you spend hours looking through profiles and have trouble finding anyone who meets your intellectual criteria for dating. Well then maybe this could naturally lead to a product where you have created an online dating website that caters to the most intellectual people, maybe the top 5% most intellectual people. So there you go, a simple business idea. Another method, you make a list of your strongest, rarest skills. And then you consider pairs of these skills and basically ask the question, what business could someone with this pair of skills, or maybe even triplet of skills, create much better than anyone who didn't have those skills? So for example, let's say that you have one particular skill that only about 1 in, say, 500 people in the population has. And then about only 1 in 500 of those that have that skill also have this other skill that you have. Well, that means that only about 1 in 250,000 people would be in a position to actually effectively execute an idea that requires you to have both of those skills. So that could be a really great area for you to go into business, because you're going to, almost by definition, have very little competition, or there are very few people who could actually execute an idea in that space. So for example, let's say you're an expert in natural language processing, and you're also an experienced intellectual property lawyer. Now, you're in a really good position to think about how can natural language processing really help intellectual property lawyers do their job faster or automate certain tasks that they have to do routinely. If you were just someone who had experience with natural language processing, you wouldn't really understand what intellectual property lawyers need. And so you might not be in a good position to actually create products for them. At the same time, if you were just an intellectual property lawyer, you probably wouldn't understand how natural language processing could help you, or what tools it would be easy to build, what tools it would be hard to build, and that sort of thing. So if you've got both of those skills together, you're in a much stronger position. I should also mention, it's ideal that you would need to have these skills in the same person. It's much easier for an intellectual property lawyer and someone with natural language processing skills to team up than it is to find someone who has both of those skills. So you want to look for areas where there's a huge advantage to having skills together in one person. All right, method number 3, and this comes from Michael Vassar. So identify a pair of companies in the same industry where one is struggling and one is really thriving. Then go and try and figure out what the difference between these two businesses is. What are the good practices that the thriving business is using, and what are the practices that the bad business is using that is leading to failure? Now, assuming you have some capital, go buy this failing business, hopefully very cheaply because it's failing, and try to implement the good practices from the good business. So for example, let's say you notice that a local restaurant is doing very badly, has barely any customers, and another very similar restaurant in the same neighborhood is actually doing very well. You might actually take a job at the thriving business, learn what their good practices are, purchase the failing business and try to implement some of those, and maybe implement some of your own ideas as well, of ways to make things more efficient. Alright, so now let's say you've actually generated some business ideas. How do you decide which ideas are good? And so let's actually talk about the traits that make a good business. First of all, marketability. You want a product that people really want. And if you have that, it's going to be a lot easier to sell this product. You also, in the same vein, want a large number of potential customers. So if you have a lot of potential customers, it's going to be a lot easier to find those customers, and there's also going to be a lot of room for growth in the future. You also want there to be little competition. So that means either you have few serious competitors, or there's so much demand for the product that you're not really competing with the competitors, because there's so much market share out there, you can all just take part of the market share. Why do you care about this? Well, if there's a lot of competition, this tends to drive profits towards zero, because people will compete over dropping prices. They'll try to undercut each other's prices, and prices will fall. They'll also tend to steal each other's customers. So it's risky if you're in a very competitive market, as people might start trying to steal your customers, which could cause big problems for you. You also want there to be a high difficulty of replication to your business. The reason for this is if your business is easy to replicate, you might have to worry about customers coming in the near future, even if they don't currently exist, because they might say, hey look, these guys are have a great business going, let's try and do what they're doing and try and do it better. You also want your business to be resilient. So one aspect of resiliency is high profit margins. So that basically means the revenue that comes in your door, a pretty high percentage of it you get to keep as profits, and you don't have to actually spend it as part of your expenses. Now, why do you care about that? Well, if your costs change a little bit and you have low profit margins, you might actually suddenly become unprofitable. Likewise, if prices drop, maybe because of competitors or some other factors, then again, if you have low profit margins, you might actually begin to lose money. You'd also like there to be multiple ways that your business can make money. This is valuable because often you don't actually know which revenue streams are going to pan out, or a revenue stream might suddenly disappear. And so if you have multiple ways of making money, you can effectively hedge yourself, and you'll have potentially different lines of business that you can get into. Yeah?
Sorry, could you just give an example of the last one?
Multiple lines of business? Sure, so I'll talk about my firm. So we're a quantitative hedge fund, so we manage money for people. But another potential line of business is selling research. We might be able to sell indicators based on our model, for example. We might be able to sell them maybe a week later after we do our trades, so there's no conflict of interest. But they could be valuable for other firms to use as inputs to their model.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So another aspect of an ideal business is a low startup risk. So this means you want to have low startup costs, or you want to have ease of raising capital. Why do you care about this? Well, basically, if you can't raise enough capital, obviously your business can't get off the ground. But even if you raise enough capital to get going, you might not be able to raise enough capital to keep it going. So there's a big risk if your business requires a lot of money to be dumped into it, that you just simply won't be able to get that much money. And you'll fail not because you didn't have a good idea, but simply because the money wasn't there. You also don't want to lose, personally, a ton of money. So a lower cost business is safer from that respect as well. You also would like there to be a short amount of time between when your business launches and when it becomes either profitable or fails. And the main reason for this is just that you don't want to spend 5 years working on a business that ends up netting you nothing. So if it has a pretty short horizon until profit or failure, then you'll help avoid that problem. And furthermore, earnings that occur closer in the future are more valuable to you than those that occur many years out due to the time value of money. So that's another reason why you might want a business that begins to be profitable rapidly. Okay, you also want your business to have a high reward potential. If you're going to be putting all of this time and money into the business, you want to make sure that for each dollar you're putting in today, there's a potential to earn many dollars in the future on that, so that the investment is worth your while. You also want a large potential for expansion into different products and services, so that you can have a lot of room to grow in the future by offering other related products, maybe to the same customers. So it's a very natural way to grow. And it gives you an adaptability, that if some of your products are not meeting customers' needs, maybe you can change your products or go into slightly different products, that sort of thing. So all else being equal, the traits that you should look for in business are things like marketability, little competition, resiliency, low startup risk, and high reward potential. Alright, so now that you've got your business idea, this question naturally arises, should you keep it secret? And there are a lot of disadvantages to discussing your idea with people. Basically, they may try to use your idea, or they may spread it to other people that might try to use your idea. But it's worth noting that the only time someone is going to take your idea and start a business based on it is if all of the following conditions are met. This person is willing to basically drop many things in their life right now to start a business. They think your business idea is so good that it's better than all of their own ideas, and it's really at the top of their list of what they'd be willing to start. They're not deterred by the fact that you're about to go into almost exactly the same business, meaning they have immediate competition, and they're willing to damage your relationship with them by basically stealing your idea. It's really quite unlikely that any given person will meet all of these conditions. Furthermore, if you actually tell people that an idea is secret and that you don't want them to talk about it until your product is launched, I think that for many people that actually will reduce the chance that they'll go spread the idea around.